It's time to strap in and get ready for the front stretch. Presented by Joe's Karting. Dan and Dirk are live in the studio today, ready to hear from you at 402-573-0590.
Good morning to you, race fans, and welcome to the front stretch presented by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs, online at joeskarting.com. Fast-paced white knuckle racing just across the river on 23rd Avenue in Council Bluffs. Get over to Joe's Karting today for a little indoor kart racing, and we've gotten a few more details via Buddy that the Slick Track Nationals are just around the corner. They're going to be starting those right around October, so we'll get you more information on that as we get closer to it. But I want to say a big thank you to Joe's Karting for presenting today's show and presenting the shows. We missed our birthday, I believe 7 years back in July, just a few weeks ago for the front stretch being on the AM 590. So thank you to everybody that supports the front stretch. Also, everybody tuning in. Tracy Weber did a little bit of drag strip racing this weekend. What's his Facebook page called? The
Midlife Crisis.
There you go, Midlife Crisis. Kevin Presky tuning in. Always love seeing Presky. And Matt Andrews. Rough night for Matt Andrews last night. Great run in the heat race at Eagle, or in the feature at Eagle Raceway. Unfortunately, they teched his springs. He had brand new springs from Speedway Motors, and they failed. So he was disqualified.
What class?
Sport Modifieds.
Yeah, that's because they're not allowed to change.
Excuse me.
Sport Mods can change springs. I was thinking Sport Compacts, because Compacts can't change springs, so they would have been illegal. But I wonder what the springs were that.
I remember at the beginning of the year, Eagle Raceway had a big thing about Race Saver springs. The approved springs.
Well, that was valve springs.
Okay. The approved springs that they had been using for years was all of a sudden testing illegal. So they were doing a bunch of Facebook Lives getting people up to date because these I obviously don't understand the whole complexity behind the materials they use and the way they load the springs, that sometimes they can have faulty springs and they can test illegal even though it's not something that the driver installed themselves.
Right, yeah.
It's not something that they did on purpose.
Yeah,
I guess
that
is
was
what I'm
valve
saying.
springs, and that was for the Race Saver Sprints, but not for a Sport Mod. So was it a valve spring that
all
failed?
I saw was spring. Maybe Matt will chime in and tell us about it. So we'll have to see on that. But I always hate seeing that. Matt's a great competitor, and I always enjoy watching him race. The older I get and the longer I get into the sport, I seem to enjoy the aggressive racers a little bit more. And two of the guys that actually kind of pop up into my head right now: Friday Night Racer, the number 7 Justin Gregg in the modifieds, and the 5S of Bob Zobek, modified driver at Eagle Raceway on Saturday nights. Both of them drive like somebody just kicked their dog. And I love it. I love watching those guys drive. And Matt Andrews is right in that area. So
yeah, Stan posted that it was valve springs. So
all right, we'll have to get more information on that from Matt. And we're going to, now that we've gotten through a majority of all the interviews that we did, we were still playing interviews in June that we did back in March during the World of Wheels car show. Now that we've gotten through all that, we're getting through a majority of the live shows. We're going to be doing a lot more local driver interviews again. We got to get those back in the hopper and start doing more of those. Talked to Stu Snyder last night about getting him back on the show because Race Saver Nationals coming up. Stan Cisar's going to join us next weekend and possibly this morning to talk a little bit about some of the results. But we got a lot coming up in the next couple of months as race season's wrapping up. Championships are getting close. I-80 and Eagle both down to single points nights left. I think Adams County may have finished up their points championship last night.
That I'm not sure. I know they got the tradition coming up, but it's not a points night. So
it's a great time to be in dirt racing, and we've been getting some pretty good weather. It's even though it's middle of August, it hasn't been blazing hot. It's been warm, but it hasn't been hot.
Yeah, it's been muggy, and the rain's been timely. It's been coming during the week. And
second Sunday morning in a row we got rained on, and I'm okay with that. Matt Andrews says it was a valve spring and the car is still at Eagle. IMCA is going to come over and tech it. Brand new motor that has never had anything changed. And unfortunately, and we're going to get into a deeper conversation, which maybe we can save for a little bit later in the show, but this is what it frustrates me about dirt racing. It's a good thing and it's a bad thing. That if it's a brand new engine, nothing's been changed on it. how is it illegal?
Well,
And I'm not calling Matt a liar, and I'm not saying something, but if the engine manufacturer screwed up, put the wrong spring in there, Matt takes the fall.
so is it some type of a crate motor?
Matt will have to answer that. Matt, is it a crate motor? Matt's chiming in on Facebook Live, by the way, if you guys want to chime in and watch this conversation. That's how we're hearing about all this stuff. So, but anyways, and I think that NASCAR, because they own the sanctioning body, because there's only so many cars, they're able to look at a situation a little bit clearer and a little bit differently. And I'm going to go back to Matt Kenseth's engine failing tech inspection at Kansas Speedway several years ago. And Matt was hit with a heavy penalty, and I disagreed with it at the time until it was overturned, or I think it was actually ended up being reduced. Matt was hit with a driver points penalty, and Matt obviously had nothing to do with that engine. As a part of Joe Gibbs's contract with Toyota, Joe Gibbs Racing is not allowed to open those engines and modify them. It was obviously an issue that came from Toyota that they tracked back to. It was just a faulty piece of equipment that got put into the engine.
Well, no, it wasn't a faulty piece of equipment.
Off.
It was a piston and rod combo that was underweight.
Right.
That's not a faulty piece. That's a bad piece.
Okay.
But to just have one out of the 8 be too light would hurt your horsepower more than it would help it. And
so after the appeals process went through for NASCAR, the penalty was reduced, and I do agree with it. There has to be a penalty so that drivers and teams don't find a way to manipulate it to look like it was somebody else's fault and they get away with it scot-free. But in this case with Matt, Matt says yes, it must have been a crate motor. So again, there's a process with this. I remember a couple of weeks ago, Jeff Ware had an issue with his alignment on his car in his hobby stock, and he didn't like the way that that the tech officials were teching his car. They weren't following it by the rule book, so he left his car down in the tech inspection lane, went back up to his hauler, grabbed his cell phone, called IMCA, reviewed the rule, went back down to the infield, went over the rule with the officials, and then they reviewed the car again, and he ended up passing tech and getting the win. And had he taken his car up to the pits, that'd have been it. He could have modified his car up there. There's nothing they can do, but he was smart, and he left his car down in the infield for the officials to keep an eye on.
Well, as far as front-end alignment, having worked on a hobby car, I don't recall any rules on front-end alignment.
It had to do with the spacing between the front wheels. And when he went and they rolled the car forward and measured it, it was 2 inches off. When they measured it when he stopped the car, it was 2 inches off. When they measured it, they rolled it forward 5 feet, it was only 3/4 of an inch off, but it was still off, so he was DQ'd. He went to the rule book and said, the rule says the driver must be in the car when they roll it forward and measure it. And the tech officials wouldn't let him do it. And then he went and called IMCA. They said, yes, that's the rule. He needs to be in the car, and he needs to be able to do it. So they let him be in the car, rolled the car forward, measured it again. He came out fine.
Yeah, it must be a new rule that they've got if they've got a measurement like that, because they never had that measurement in there before. And I teched hobby stocks too for IMCA, and that was not a rule when I did that.
Was that back in Barney Rubble's day? Like it was.
No, it was within the last 10 years.
Stone Age?
2011.
And we know these rule books change quite a bit, but that was the conversation I had with Jeff Ware about what happened with that situation, and he was one of the few situations where his car ended up passing, and he was able to get the win credited back to his rule books or his record book. So
back to his rule book.
Yeah, back to his rule book. All right, so we're 9 minutes in, and we haven't even talked about what we were supposed to be talking about this morning. If any of you chiming in on Facebook Live, you're welcome to give a comment, your thoughts on the race at Michigan for NASCAR, their thoughts on the race from Bristol. Coming up in turn number 2, we're going to talk about the point standings for the Pick'ems contest. It's getting tight. There is only 2 points races left before we set the playoffs, the 16 drivers that are going to be in the playoffs for NASCAR. And so I wanted to review the contestants and where they're sitting for that. I apologize. My allergies are going crazy, and I can't even think this morning. I should have let you plan the show, Dirk. But let's talk about the Michigan results from last Sunday. Kevin Harvick ends up picking up the win. Denny Hamlin comes home in second. Kyle Larson with a good top 5 finish. He finishes third. Martin Truex Jr. in fourth. Daniel Suarez fifth. Kyle Busch, Ryan Preece, William Byron, Chase Elliott, and Alex Bowman, your top 10. Bad days for Clint Clint Boyer, he was caught up in an accident early. Well, not early, 139 laps in, but he was only able to complete 139 laps, but he was caught up in an accident.
Yeah, it was in an accident. Yes, he was.
Who did he get? Did he get into Spencer?
No. He got into, I want to say Austin Dillon was involved in that one, if I'm not mistaken.
You want to turn your sound off on your phone there. Dirk's tuning in on the Facebook Live, too, and it's feeding back into the headphones. So Clint Boyer finishing 37th on the day. Jimmy Johnson finishes 34th. Eric Almirola, 33rd. Ross Chastain, who has had some good runs of late, finishes 29th. Daniel Hemrick, 26th. Ryan Blaney, 24th. Kurt Busch, 23rd. A lot of drivers that you would expect to be up in the top 15 had rough days at Michigan, even though they finished on the lead lap. Brad Keselowski, 19th. So because of that, because of the results at Michigan, Jimmy Johnson, who was 2 positions to the good going into the playoffs, actually falls out of the playoffs and goes 2 positions out of the playoffs.
And even further out after last night.
Even further out after last night, absolutely. So Jimmy Johnson's starting to look a little bit rough as he gets into the playoff picture. Moving into last night at Bristol, since it's a little more fresh, and maybe some of the dirt track fans, haven't gotten a chance to haven't gotten a chance to see the race, and I was at Eagle last night. So if you could kind of review just a little bit, Dirk, for what happened as kind of an overview of the race.
Let's start with the overview on Friday night's Xfinity race where, I can't even think of Tyler Reddick. Failed inspection 4 times, so he didn't even get a chance to qualify. He just started in the back and had to do a pass-through on the first lap and still ended up winning.
That seems to be a theme.
So, and it looked like it might happen again last night when Kyle Busch was just the first car out to qualify and just didn't lay down a real good lap and qualified 31st. But when they, he won the second stage and led a good portion of the final stage until he was off sequence and had to pit under green and still came back with a 4th place finish.
Good finish for Kyle Busch. Your race winner ends up being Denny Hamlin after, I love saying this. Every time I get to say this, I love saying this. Matt DiBenedetto. You don't get to say a second place finish very often. He's had some really nice top 10s, really nice top 5s. Didn't he have a career best 3rd place finish earlier this year?
He had a career best 4th place finish at Sonoma and also had a good run at the Glen. But career best 2nd place finish, led 90 some odd laps, I think. How many laps did he lead?
93.
And
actually ended up getting more points on the day than Denny Hamlin did.
Yeah, he just got tight, and that's exactly what he told Hamlin. He got tight. He congratulated Hamlin on the win. They raced each other clean. Hamlin, the first thing in his interview he said is, "I feel so bad for Matt."
Yeah. And that's the great thing about racing. I never buy that anybody ever lets somebody get by him for the win. I'll never buy that in my life, because if Denny Hamlin was subscribed to that recipe or whatever you want to call it.
If he felt bad enough, Matt would have won.
Right, and Denny wouldn't have gotten by him. But sure enough, Denny's fighting for his playoffs. Denny's fighting for his career, because I think Denny's one of probably the most likely driver at Joe Gibbs Racing to be on the hot seat for Christopher Bell, which, by the way, we could talk about that here now. We learned earlier this week that Matt DiBenedetto is not going to be returning to the 95 machine at Levine Family Racing, which, by the way, that's the team that picked up the satellite contract that Furniture Row Racing gave up when they closed at the end of last season. The 95 team picked up that contract with Joe Gibbs Racing, has been receiving technical information and chassis from Joe Gibbs Racing, and Matty D was tabbed to drive that car, and now all of a sudden he's going to be out of a ride. Speculation is running rampant. It's actually pretty uniformed as far as what's going to happen. Most people are pretty certain that Christopher Bell is going to be sitting down in the 95 in 2020.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what it looks like. Quick speculation was with David Reagan saying that he's stepping back out of a full-time deal, that that's where Matt would go, but that would not be a forward move for Matt, unfortunately. I consider that a second-tier car.
Yeah.
It's not a top-tier equipment, but that might be where he ends up.
And I think Levine Family Racing, I apologize, I've said it 2 different ways because we've heard it 4 different ways. Levine, I think that they're probably a year, this time next year or maybe even 2021, they're going to be a top 15 car. I think they're on the pace to do exactly what Furniture Row Racing did, and that's really what you're seeing with these big teams being able to do technical support with the smaller teams for a fee.
Well, what I would like to see is I would like to see a sponsor step up and pick Matty D up and let Levine go ahead and put a second car on.
Yeah, that would be a good to see, and maybe that'll happen. I know Matt's had issues with sponsorships, getting full sponsors in the past, but a great guy, and we're going to work very diligently to get him on the show, whether it be before Kansas or at Kansas Speedway. But he's one of those guys that we would love to sit on the race show, and of course, I'll get to say Matt DiBenedetto as often as I can, and how many times I can get that right. Brad Keselowski ends up bringing it home 3rd. Kyle Busch in 4th, like Dirk mentioned. Chase Elliott with a nice top 5 finish. Kyle Larson, again, nice finish on the at this race, 6th place after starting 2nd. Clint Boyer comes home 7th, Daniel Suarez 8th, Kurt Busch 9th, and Ryan Blaney with a top 10 finish. Kevin Harvick completed 244 laps, finished 4th in Stage 1, ended up finishing tail end Charlie at 39th. What happened with old Kevin?
They had a caution right before, I want to say 6-8 laps before the end of Stage 2, and he went to put the car in gear after the pit stop everybody made, and there was no gear to put the car into.
Yeah.
And he had a cam on the back bumper, and when he rolled forward about 5 feet, as the guys, they always push him out of pit.
Yeah.
And he didn't go anywhere, but there was a nice puddle of grease from underneath the car. So something in the transmission.
Bum, bum, bum.
So he didn't come out. They pushed him back to the garage, and that was the end of his night. But had a very fast car up till that point. Very fast.
Tracy Weber says Matty D is getting hosed. Completely agree. Matt's doing a great job in that 95 car, but I don't blame, if the rumors are true and Christopher Bell is in line to take over that ride in 2020, I don't blame Levine Family Racing for letting Matt go and putting Christopher Bell in the car, because I think Christopher Bell's probably got a brighter future than Matty D does.
Well,
But
yes
you
no.
never know. People probably said the same thing about Joey Logano moving over to the 22 at Penske, and they said, I think I was actually one of them that said, I think there's 5 other drivers that deserve that ride better than Joey Logano does. He hasn't done much at Joe Gibbs Racing, and he was able to go and win a championship and has been a strong contender every year since.
But, yeah, Bell's still, he's had some good runs in the Xfinity car, but he's a little bit of an unknown yet. I don't like the way that the powers that be over at Levine said it's out of our hands, which to me means that Toyota is actually making this decision.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so many irons in the fire when it comes to somebody driving. Unfortunately, and let's face it, it hasn't been talent-based for 40 years?
Well,
there's
this
been
one is
plenty
talent-based, to an extent. Bell's got a real good chance of winning the Xfinity title.
Yeah.
He's got 5 wins, I think, this year in the Xfinity Series, so it's not like there's no talent there.
Yeah, it's not a sponsor buying a ride, which happens every once in a while, and it happens on all levels of the circuit, and it's been happening since auto racing has been way too expensive, which I think was about race number 3 of auto racing.
Well, it was back with the dinosaurs.
Right. So, I absolutely agree, Tracy. Matt's getting the shaft, but he's going to join a long line of drivers that had this issue happen. Back to the standings last night, or the results last night at Bristol. Michael McDowell finished 37th. David Reagan, who's on his final year as a full-time driver, finished 36th. Austin Dillon, 34th. Eric Almirola, 29th. Eric Jones, 22nd. Jimmy Johnson, another tough day for the 48 team, finishing 19th on the day.
And all those cars that you mentioned there were all involved in accidents.
Okay. Bumper cars last night at Bristol, because it can turn into that.
A little bit.
All right, that's going to do it for us in long pregnant pause there. I was waiting for NASCAR.com to load, but it's not going to. So we're going to move on. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back in turn number 2. Rick Havenridge Pick'ems contest review coming up. It's going to be Fantasy League conversation, and we'll get you set for, maybe we'll tease just a little bit about the Kansas Speedway final Crewman for a Day contest. We'll be taking a break. We'll be back in turn number 2.
Hey, look at that. You're sitting on your couch playing Halo, Madden, or NASCAR while your friends are at Joe's Karting. Each lap is an adrenaline-filled, heart-pumping, white-knuckle experience that you can only get at the Metro's largest indoor karting track. Eco-friendly Honda engines rip you around their professionally designed road course at breakneck speeds. Can you reach the 14-second lap bracket? There's only one way to find out. Put the controller down and get to Joe's Karting, 23rd Avenue in Council Bluffs next to Quaker Steak and Lube.
The largest sprint car race in the country returns to America's home track, Eagle Raceway, over Labor Day weekend. 4 days of non-stop sprint car racing action, topped with Dr. Danger performing spectacular, heart-pumping, hair-singeing stunts. Over 100 sprint cars from across the nation will attack Eagle Raceway for the Race Saver Sprint Car Nationals, and so can you for a limited time price of only $45 for a 4-day weekend pass. Visit EagleRaceway.com for tickets and more information. The Race Saver Nationals at Eagle Raceway, Labor Day weekend. Be there.
Dan and Dirk are rolling into turn 2 with a little attitude on the front stretch.
I'm rolling in with a little allergy. That's it. No more attitude. I got allergy all day today. Thanks again, everybody, for tuning in to Facebook Live. Stan Cisar says Eric Jones is I believe he means overrated, is an overacted at JGR. Would love to see Marty D get that right. That probably won't happen. Stan. And then Weber says, Stan's got some big fingers tonight. We were late last night at Eagle Raceway with the races running just a little bit late with all the cautions and 148 race cars at Eagle Raceway last night. So a lot of cars and a lot of races being called. And Stan talked about it. The commercial for the Race Saver Nationals coming up in just a couple of weeks. RaceSaver.com for tickets and information. We're going to get more into that in turn 3, information about who's going to be coming, but we will talk farther in depth next week as we have Stan tabbed to come on the show. Turn 2 next week. We'll get you set, everything to go for the Race Saver Nationals. And Dr. Danger is going to be there this year as the
stuntman.
Yeah, as kind of the I can't even think of the word.
Stuntman.
I guess we'll just go with stuntman. When they have a celebrity be the Grand Marshal, that's it. He's the official Grand Marshal of the Race Saver Nationals. I guess I need more Allegra. All right, we're going to talk a little bit about the Rick Havenridge Pickups Contest, presented, obviously, by Rick Havenridge of Wealth Partners. Get more information online, rickadvice.com. Wealth Partners is a financial advisory practice of Ameriprise Financial Services. Visit more and get more information, rickhavenridgeadvice.com. So I finally sent out an email earlier this week of the Pickups Contest talking about who's standing where and if the playoffs were to start today. And this is kind of where the fun thing starts to play in, because you're seeing some drivers like Holly Humphrey, who's our current points leader. After last night picking Denny Hamlin to win the race, she now has 7 wins on the year. So she has 1,010 points after last night's race results.
Well, I thought with the fantasy league, though, it didn't necessarily the winner. The winner on the fantasy league was the one with the most points. So Denny Hamlin wouldn't have been the winner.
No, it's driver who picks when you pick the driver. If you pick the winning driver, not the driver that got the most points.
Well, because we had this discussion with my brother a few weeks ago, because he was questioning, and you said, no, it's the driver that gets the most points is the winner for the fantasy league, not the winner of the race.
The contestant that has the most points going into the playoffs is racked, but it's by driver win. There's driver win and team win on our fantasy contest on the website. We don't use team win at all. Team win is when you have the most points of the other contestants, you get a team win. Driver win is when you pick the driver that wins the race. That's the way that we've always done the contest. So anyways, she has 1,010 points. If it was to start today, she would get reset to 2,000 points, and she would continue to be our points leader because she would get 3 bonus playoff points for every win that she has on the season. With 7 and 2 races to go, she could still rack up even more points. She has 2,021 points going into the playoffs, and that's if they were to start today. The fun thing to watch is the bubble line. Obviously, that's always the fun one to watch. Hawk 76 is farther back in the points, sitting 16th, but has 6 wins on the year. Now, they have a 30-point advantage over 17th Fisherman Brian. But if Hawk 76 were to qualify for the playoffs, continue moving forward and stay into that top 16, they would jump all the way up into third, a tie for second place with 6 wins. So it's really important for Hawk 76 to kind of play that favorite thing about Fantasy League. Who do I pick that is safe enough to going to get me into the next round, but I'm not using the good drivers that I want to keep for the playoffs, because you still have to have 10 great picks going into the playoffs.
Well, and that's the other thing you have to look at with somebody that's got 7 wins. Have they used Kyle Busch 3 times and Harvick 3 times and Truex 3 times? The last couple of years, our regular season champion, for going into the playoffs, has burned all their picks and just drops like a rock once they get in the playoffs.
And that's, I think, what is one of the tougher things about our contest is that it all resets. It's just like the NASCAR playoffs, 3-4 years ago, when they used to do the top 16 qualified by points, and then they modified it a little bit, and then they modified it again, and now they've modified it again, but we've stuck to that original format that we've always enjoyed, because you get to the top 16 in points alone, and then we reset you to 2,000. You get 3 bonus playoff points for every win, and you move forward from there. So let's take a look at Holly's picks throughout the year and see what she has. She's picked Chase Elliott 3 times, Joey Logano 3 times. She has a Harvick, a Kyle Busch, a Keselowski, a Truex, a Boyer. She's got pretty good picks left going into the final, 12 races of the season. So and she hasn't blown through all of her picks.
Boyer in that?
Because he could. There is a short track. Yeah, you're right. He's had a terrible season, hasn't he? By the way, speaking of Boyer, I think I did read that he was they're in contract negotiations for him to return to the 14 of Stewart-Haas Racing, and things are looking favorable.
Yeah, but Marty D's available. So.
Right. And apparently Daniel Suarez not looking promising that he's going to make his return. So a lot of the silly season is definitely heating up for NASCAR.
And it's interesting that those two are battling for the last playoff spot right now, Boyer and Suarez. So, and last night they kept a running track on that when one would get 3 spots, and then now Suarez is in the transfer spot. Well, Boyer back in front of him, and yeah, they kept up on that.
That's what I do think they do a fantastic job with the TV broadcast, is keeping that bubble picture very clear, understanding where things are at and who's where and all that kind of fun stuff.
So Rick Allen had a rough weekend at Bristol. He kept calling. I don't remember if it was the truck race or the Xfinity race, but he said it several times. He said it was a 1-track groove. Several times, not just once. He kept repeating that one.
Oh. That's fun. I'm not going to give him any grief for that, because I've had tongue-tied issues plenty of times on this show and plenty of times while on the microphone at racetracks, and people do enjoy calling me out on it, which I'm fine with that, because then I learn that I keep saying things backwards.
It doesn't stop you from doing it, but
I undermeant what you stood. That was kind of a favorite thing. So don't forget the Pickups contest, absolutely free to participate in. 2 more races to go before we end the regular season. Reset the top 16, which, by the way, I'm sitting in 17th right now. I didn't know if you heard that or not.
You've still never been in the top 16.
I was talking with Brandon last night, who is part of the contest too. I'm really proud of that, because there was a point earlier in this season where I was like 70th. I mean, I was so far back. I just eventually just said, to heck with it. I'm not sure this is really going to do much. And so I just kind of started having fun with it and started having fun with the contest again. And before I know it, I'm sitting in 17th. By the way, I'm not going to bump somebody out for the playoffs. That's something Dirk and I have always done for the last few years since we've gone to this system, that we're not going to bump somebody out of the playoffs so that we can play in it, because we can't win. Not that anybody
really has to worry about that.
So it's always a fun contest. And we do a 5-week contest, which we invented these 5-week contests because we wanted people to still be able to win prizes that were sitting farther back in the point standings. We didn't want to keep awarding prizes to the contestant that is in the top 5 and the top 10 all the time. So we created separate 5-week contests, and our next 5-week contest is coming up. I think we're going to announce it. I think our first race is set to be Indy. We just have a few more details to button down. Kansas Speedway has approved the promotion, so we've got the tickets for the top 5, and we've got the hot passes for the grand prize winner, which is 2 garage passes for the Cup Series. Now we're just working on figuring out our team, whether it's going to be Starcom Racing, which has been fantastic to us in the past, or if we're going to bump up. We've got an opportunity, a rare opportunity to be able to work with one of the top-tier teams. I forgot to tell you about that, by the way, though.
Well, it's still just a rare opportunity. Yeah.
So we'll see if it goes through, but otherwise, I'm kind of partial. With the top-tier team, you get the glitz and the glamour, and you get to see the button-down T-shirts and the high money. But with the smaller teams, I think you get a little bit more exposure, and you get to do a little bit more and kind of experience a little bit more. We ran into it when we were at Iowa Speedway with this last race, that there's a lot of legal issues when a non-employee for the race team touches the car. And there's some obligations. That person could mistakenly alter the car, and all of a sudden the team's facing a $50,000 fine from NASCAR for illegal body modifications when it was just a fan that accidentally touched the car in the wrong spot. Those simple things could flare up and cause some issues. So we totally understand all that stuff. Hey, Lori says, good to see my boys. Lori comes down and does photos with us at Kansas Speedway and over at Iowa Speedway. Big David Starr fan, so good to have Lori on the show this morning, watching on Facebook Live. Well, that's the contest. And again, I'll run through your top 10. Your top 5 right now. Ombre 6, Cat 44, Harvick wins, Nate P and Axeman. Harvick wins, Nate P and Axeman all tied for 3rd with 5 wins. So when they get bonused into the playoffs, they're going to be tied for 3rd. And I said that all wrong because I have it reset for the playoffs. Ombre 6, Harvick wins, Cat 44, Frost 97, so worth it, a former champion of the contest, all in the top 5. So if you want to find out more, we do post about it on the Front Stretch Facebook page throughout the week as we're getting set for the each weekend. And if you want to join, those 5-week contests are absolutely free, thanks to our friend Rick Havenridge over at Wealth Partners.
Yep, and when are we starting our last one here? What...
The contest should get announced. I got to get working on it. It should be announced next week. You'll have 2 weeks to sign up, and the first race is going to be at Indianapolis. We'll go Vegas, Richmond, Charlotte Roval, and then we'll wrap things up at Dover. I knew I was going to do that. I knew that was coming, and I still did it.
Okay, Rick Allen, it's all right.
Oh, let's take a break. We're going to be back on the front stretch. I'm going to have Stan Cisar call in so that he can take a majority of the weight off of us for a little while. 402-573-0590 if you want to chime in on anything you saw at Bristol, Michigan, your thoughts on the playoffs, who's going to get in, who's going to get eliminated and sit on the outside looking in, and any of the local dirt racing throughout the area. 402-573-0590. We'll be back on the front stretch.
We all have that coworker that runs their mouth off at how great they are. They shot a 5 under par, 95-mile-an-hour fastball, bench press 375, brah. Wouldn't you love to shut them up by schooling them at Joe's Karting? Council Bluffs' premier indoor karting track, professionally designed so each corner is your opportunity to embarrass your coworker. Call Buddy for your next company outing at 712-256-5278. Joe's Karting, white knuckle racing just across the river on 23rd Avenue next to AMC 17.
If you love wings, if you love rings, and all kinds of other tempting things, great times, great food, get to Quaker Steak and Lube.
Quaker Steak and Lube is the official watering hole of the front stretch and the best place to catch all the NASCAR action. Open at 11 a.m. with delivery available.
Great times, times, great food. Get to Quaker Steak and Lube.
Located on Mid-America Drive in Council Bluffs.
Feather the brake and get back to the gas. Dan and Dirk are headed into turn 3 on the front stretch.
Lori says she can't wait to break her camel in.
402-573-0590 if you want to chime in on some of the race results from around the area, your thoughts on the racing action. There's points nights coming down, points battles getting hot and heavy. Just off the top of my head, while I get ready for this one, last night at Eagle, Gunner Pike ended up picking up the win, which, by the way, I've got my new Gunner Pike t-shirt on. Sponsored by Tailored Computers. It's somewhere on the back of the shirt is our
small
sponsorship.
print.
Yeah.
You got the dime size print on the back, do you?
I give as much as I can, and it's not nearly enough. But good run for Gunner last night, able to pick up the race win. And he has trimmed his deficit to Sean Harker, who is currently the points leader for the Sport Mods at Eagle Raceway. And it's going to be a great battle. I don't know exactly how many points. It was 10 points going into last night, and Gunner finished first, obviously getting the win with 40 points. And then Sean officially finished fifth with Harker with Matt Andrews potentially getting disqualified. It could bump Harker up another 2 points and being able to cushion his lead a little bit more. But it should be down to somewhere around, 4 or 6 points as they go into the final points night at Eagle.
Yeah, I'd also, another local points race. I saw on Facebook that Andrew Koziski is 8 points out in late models at I-80 with Bill Layton Jr. in the lead, and I think Robbie Leonard was just a point behind Layton and 7 ahead of Andrew.
Yeah, that late model battle at I-80 is it has been intense for about 3 or 4 weeks, and it doesn't seem to be letting up. No one's walking away with it. Josh Leonard had the better run on Friday night. Andrew struggled a little bit. Bill Layton Jr. struggled just a little bit. And by I say struggled, I think Andrew still had a top 3. I think Bill might have finished runner-up. So, yeah, it's an incredibly tight battle. Let me pull it up right now. Josh Leonard, 1 point behind Bill Layton Jr. Andrew, 8 points back. Ben Schaller, 36 points back. And Josh Krug, 37 points back. So a very, very tight points battle going into the final night. For I-80 Speedway, it's going to be Sunday, September 1st of the so it's a championship Sunday. It's a special day they race for that race. And that championship, very close. Jacob Brown starting to pull away in the Bragg and Wright late models at I-80 Speedway. It's been a great battle between him and Jake Bridge all season long. Jake had some issues during his heat race. Actually got all 4 tires, hit the rut, and the car was completely sideways. Still managed to save it and plop it down back on all 4s safely. Didn't roll the car, but had some pretty extensive damage. Had some pretty extensive damage, and but was able to make repairs. Got out into a spare car, and made his way up through the field to reduce the amount of points. But he is 14 points behind.
Well, they had a picture on Facebook of a sprint car up on top of a catch fence. I don't remember what track that was at, but they had big telephone poles for their poles on their catch fence, and they were fairly tightly spaced. And this sprint car was literally up on top of the catch fence.
Wow.
Not sticking in the side of the catch fence like we've seen them at I-80 a couple times, but up on top, balanced up there.
Yeah.
But the safety crews did a good job getting the driver out and getting the car down without tearing it up. But the car didn't look like it rolled, so I don't know exactly how it got up there. I wish there had been a video of that, but that'd have been interesting to be able to see. All the other points battles at I-80 kind of wrapped up. The modifieds, Ryan Jenkins has a 19-point advantage over his buddy Jacob Hobscheit. Hobby Stocks finished their point season. Luke Ramsey is your champion. Stephen Oakes, 44-point advantage over Dustin Grout in the Sport Compacts, who Dustin Grout, by the way, is leading in the Division 5 National NASCAR points series. So he's battling for a national championship. And Sean Harker at I-80 Speedway,
78-point advantage over Devin Peterson, who Devin Peterson has come on incredibly strong in 2019, late in the season. I got to give my hats off to I-80 Speedway. They did a phenomenal job on Friday night, 118 cars, and they rolled through the show. I think total race time was right around 2 hours and 35 or 37 minutes. We started the racing at 7:15, a little after. Ended the racing action a tick before 10 o'clock. So to be able to roll through that, I mean, they did a great job. And on top of the fact that there was 3 red flags in the Sport Compacts, 2 different cars rolled, and one of them smacked the wall really hard. So it was a red flag latent.
And then the race was cut short, so they didn't finish. They ran out of time. So
they completed their full laps, but they could have. Officially by the rules, they should have gone back to a green, white, checkered. But they just said, third car rolling over, we're done.
And you mentioned Jacob Hobscheid. He's been on a little bit of a roll. He, along with winning Friday night at I-80, which was, he's got a little win streak going there, 2 or 3 in a row, and then won again at Junction last night. So
402-573-0590. Stan's trying to get in, but having a tough time. He's on the line? Okay, so we'll cut to Stan here in just a second, but absolutely, to talking about Jacob Hobscheid, very good, and heck of a run for Jacob. Made the move for the win coming out of Turn 4, and just an amazing modified race at I-80 Speedway on Friday night. Joining us on the phone now, the voice of the Speedway and announcer at Eagle Raceway, getting set for the Race Saver Nationals. Stan, how you feeling this morning?
I'm real good, Dan. How about you?
Have you been listening to the show?
Did you enjoy your apple pie that you had after the race?
I wish you wouldn't have brought that up because I was blaming all of my issues on my allergies.
And was that a la mode or was it just straight apple pie?
It was a la mode when I got home. Finished off with some Allegra.
Or maybe that's your allergy. Maybe you're allergic to apple pie.
Holy cow. By the way, Anthony Clark was one of the guys who was involved in one of the first red flags at I-80 on Friday night, and Tracy Weber says he thinks he has 3 broken ribs from his accident. So Sport Compacts, 4-cylinder front-wheel drive cars, you could still cause some serious damage in those things. Don't get deceived by how slow they go compared to the rest of the race cars. So Anthony Clark, hopefully he's better. I know he's going for a points championship in, I think it's at Shelby County or Adams County. So hopefully he can still get out there and race.
And they're actually not that slow, especially on a track like Eagle. I think they turn lap times very similar to the hobby stocks.
Yeah, and I think... We're
doing it with half the cylinders and driving from the wrong end.
Yeah, sometimes that's true in multiple ways. But yeah,
I
think.
But it seems to be it's evolved into being one of the lesser populated classes, but it still seems to be right up there when it comes to drama.
I do love watching that race last night. Was awesome at Eagle for the Sport Compacts, and but I think the sprint car race. I told Adam Gullion. Adam Gullion had one of the better runs for a second-place car, and if it hadn't been for him having a good second-place run, I'm not sure that would have been a good race because Joey Danley stunk it up.
Well, Toby Chapman was on his way to making it 2 in a row, and he tried to knock the wall down. And, it was an excellent race, and part of our job is to try to make the fans aware of some of the really good racing that's going on that might not be for the lead. And that was taking place throughout the field. I mean, some of the slicing and dicing for 3rd, 4th, 5th back there, and even around the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th position. It's been off the charts. And, I had a conversation with Tyler Dirk about the Race Saver division in general, and he's looking forward to the Nationals coming up, as are we all. But, gosh, I think we've had 4 two-time winners. We've had another 6 or 7 or so winners, some picking up their first ever win in the Race Saver division. It's a very, very closely competitive class, and gosh, it's morphed into one of my favorite deals.
Maybe it's because I'm looking at things in a microcosm, and we have a bad habit of doing that, but it really feels to me like the drivers that are contending for the top 10 this year at Eagle Raceway are some of the best throughout the area, and they're all coming on strong at the right time. This could be a year that Nebraska finally gets that championship back from Texas.
Well, yeah, I'm thinking, gosh, even though Jason Martin hasn't competed with us on a regular basis this year, he's one of those guys. He's been out racing the Race Saver car. He's picked up some really big wins. He won a URSS race down in Oberlin, Kansas last night. He's won at Dodge City. He's been very competitive at the Belleville 305 Nationals. There's a guy that you can never count out, and he very easily could have had 2 in a row last year. He and Kevin Ramey dueled it out in that slight mist that would start coming down for the last 5 laps of a feature. And gosh, we're going to talk about that more next week. We're going to really break things down and give a lot more details. But I believe well over 80 pre-entries already. We still got a couple weeks to go, and we might not crack that 100 entry, but we're going to have a great field of cars. And you were touching on the 119 cars out at I-80 last night. I believe the final count was 150, and we ran 16 heat races and 10 features. We had a C main in the sport modified division. Dion Kovar came all the way from the C to the B and had a pretty good run going in the A until he got caught up in somebody's mess. And like I say, got to give a call to him because he had it going on last night. But that racing up at the front of the pack was excellent.
I had to do a double take on the B feature because 2 laps into it, Dion Kovar takes the lead, and I looked and I went, wait, didn't he just come out of the C? Shouldn't he be halfway through the field? 2 laps, he took the lead, and the Banana Gang went nuts. Oh yeah, it shouldn't have been. It shouldn't have been that easy because it's easier. If you're as Dirk likes to call it, a top tier car, which Kovar is on any given night. You run into a little adversity in your heat race, you end up in that C main. It's pretty easy to glide through that thing, and then you start at the end of the B. And if you're normally an A feature car, you figure out a way to get up there, And he made the B look really easy, and he was halfway through the field. I think he was up to 10th A when had some issues, but gosh, what can you say, And I tell you what, the crowds are responding to the excellent competition because they're turning out. I mean, week after week, and we talk a lot about the tracks that have very successful specials and weekly series, sometimes not quite up to par. Eagle, on the other hand, their specials sometimes are just okay. They're great, but they're just okay. But man, that weekly show. A good friend of mine that's been a motorsports writer for quite a number of years. He says it's got to be one of the top bang for your buck weekly show dollars spent on the. Yeah, I agree. And I think this is another one of those contrasts between the tracks that sit just 11, 12 13 miles apart. Yeah, I-80 has great specials and good weekly racing. I think Eagle has great weekly racing and good specials. The people in this area are spoiled. Yeah. Yep. You got the best of both worlds, and they're 13 miles apart. And gosh, we've been talking about the Race Saver Nationals coming up. That following week is gonna rival that deal because the Midwest Fall Brawl and the Nebraska Cup, both on the same weekend, both featuring 360 and 305 sprints. And the Malvern Bank Super Late Model Series at Eagle for the Nebraska Cup. Going to throw in some vintage racing, and that's going to be 2 great nights, plus a little Big Red football to get thrown in on top of it. Icing on the cake. Spoken like a true Hawkeye. I wanted to come back to last night's action. It's something has been very, very rare in 2019. Somebody other than Jeff Ware won in the Valentino's Hobby Stocks. Yeah, and I had actually James pointed out the fact I'd forgotten that Dylan Richards picked up that win at the Icebreaker this year, but he did pretty good in that Sport Compact division, and I really like to see guys moving out of the Sport Compact, moving up the racing ladder. And Richards is a guy, he hasn't raced weekly at Eagle,
but when he shows up, he's been pretty darn good, and I think the future's bright for him in that hobby stock division. And he actually was the first guy to win a feature other than Jeff Ware, that Jeff Ware finished the race.
Right.
The one night he got involved in a tangle in the heat race, had some damage to the rear end of the car, and he did come out. He did take his A feature start, but had a DNF that night. So, whenever you talk to Jeff, he likes to say, well, I was running the table. That was an asterisk because that didn't count that I got beat that night because I didn't finish. But all in all, still a great season. And what can you say? He's one of the guys. Coincidentally, Dylan Richards, even though these chassis on these cars are almost all the same and you're just hanging sheet metal on them, Jeff Ware's running a Chevy Malibu, and Dylan Richards last night was in a Chevy Malibu.
No kidding. Yeah, I completely agree with you on Dylan Richards. I think he's a wheelman, and I would love to see some sponsorship dollars come behind him because I think he could be one of the rare talents in our sport.
And you and I talked about it last night. When those guys were coming up in the Sport Compact, he had some great races. There was kind of a rivalry going between he and Cole Creco.
Mm-hmm.
Cole hasn't had the success in the hobby stock. I really don't feel like he's got the equipment that Dylan Richards has got. I think Cole, given a top tier car, I think he could hang and bang with those guys too in that deal. And unfortunately, last night I had a little adversity and involved in a little tangle and lost the radiator in the 30K. But the future's bright. Got some great young drivers coming up. You can see that in the sport modified division, especially, and in the sprint car division. Gosh, the guys coming out of different divisions and getting into sprint cars. And same, you talked about Peterson, Devin Peterson,
yeah,
out at I-80. He's really come on strong in the last month, and they got something figured out, and maybe they have to take a closer look at that one too. But he's been very competitive, and but he's been around. A guy gets 3-4 years under his belt in any given class, he's ready to start moving up the ladder, and when they put it all together, they figure something out on the suspension or the engines and the right combination. There's a lot of driving talent out there, and everybody, unfortunately, don't have the same platform to showcase that talent.
This coming Saturday night, points championship wrapped up, and what's your prediction for sprint cars in the house on Saturday night?
Well, gosh, we had over 30 last night. I was thinking there might have even been a few more, but you might see a few travelers come in just a little bit early. I think everybody's going to try one more. I know it was great last night to be able to get some laps on the 47 and kind of find out where we're at, and we got some work to do. We're not quite at the top of the A game, but hopefully we got a couple of weeks yet to prepare, and hopefully we get that thing in the show again this year.
And then you're going to be at I-80 coming up this Friday for the annual Speedy Bill Smith Memorial featuring the Nebraska Carpetland Nebraska 360s.
Yeah, we always look forward to that race. All the folks from Speedway come down. They put on a great show. There's free tickets available. You can get online. They want to see a packed house. They want to see a huge crowd, and they'll be treated to some great racing out there next Friday night. Look forward to working with you guys out there.
$1,500 to win for the sprint cars, compacts, brag and right late model stock cars, sport mods, and modifieds. And then you're back at the track Saturday night at Eagle for the final points night. Stan, always do appreciate having you on the show. We got to wrap it up and get over into turn 4.
Very quickly, I got to give one call. A guy picked up his first ever feature win last night, A.J. Jorgensen up at Shelby County Speedway. A number that's near and dear to my heart, 47, one of the Jorgensen boys. Boys, congratulations, A.J., on that feature win.
How much did you pay him to put that number on the car?
Hey, it was their idea.
Thanks, Stan. Always do appreciate it.
All right, guys.
We're going to take a break. We'll be back in turn number 4 on the front stretch.
Every race car driver has run into the same problem. It's well past normal parts store closing hours, but you need that one to finish your car. The guys who brought you White Knuckle Racing by the River bring you Joe's Karting Racing Parts and Tire Store. Open until 10 p.m. Monday to Thursday and open until 11 p.m. on Friday and Saturday. A parts store that fits your after-hours schedule, and you can turn a few laps at Joe's Karting while you're waiting for your part to get pulled from their warehouse. joeskarting.com for more information.
The largest sprint car race in the country returns to America's home track, Eagle Raceway, over Labor Day weekend. 4 days of non-stop sprint car racing action, topped with Dr. Danger performing spectacular, heart-pumping, hair-singeing stunts. Over 100 sprint cars from across the nation will attack Eagle Raceway for the Race Saver Sprint Car Nationals, and so can you for a limited time price of only $45 for a 4-day weekend pass. Visit EagleRaceway.com for tickets and more information. The Race Saver Nationals at Eagle Raceway, Labor Day weekend. Be there!
Quaker Steak and Lube in Council Bluffs isn't just another wing joint. It's a great place for beers, bikes, classic cars, and amazing specials. Get to the Lube each Monday for Kids Night, where Kids Lube Cruiser meals are just 99 cents with an adult entree. Each Tuesday, you can pound down all the wings you can handle for just $14.95 during all-you-can-eat wings. Wednesday is Bike Night, and Thursday is Classic Car Cruising. Follow them on Facebook at Quaker Steak and Lube Council Bluffs.
Get to Quaker Steak and Lube.
Dan and Dirk are live for one last corner. Give them a call now at 402-573-0590.
What do we got, Craig? Like 4 minutes left in the show? 3 minutes left in the show? 4 minutes left to wrap up turn 4. So we're going to diamond this corner off and get a good run at the start-finish line. Thanks, everybody, for chiming in on Facebook Live. There's been a nice conversation about the Marty D situation, as we're now calling him. And, by the way, we have tickets to Eagle Raceway. I get free admission tickets for every night that I work, and despite popular belief, I have worked quite a bit this year.
Well,
I've been at the racetrack.
Anyway.
I've been at the racetrack. So if you want tickets, 402-573-0590, 4-packs, 6-packs, 10-packs, whatever you want. I've got tickets to go to Eagle Raceway, and it's for this coming Saturday only. So you got to get them, and you got to get them quickly. 402-573-0590. All right, with the last couple of minutes, I want to get set for the show. By the way, there was a amazing points battle. I meant to get to it with Cody Olson over at Harlan. We'll have to get to it another time. Maybe we can mark it for when he is... we get him on the show in the next couple of weeks and talk about that points battle. But congratulations, Cody Olson, going in with a 1-point advantage at Harlan, overcame some adversity, and still picked up the track championship. Incredibly talented driver Cody Olson is. Love seeing him pick up that track championship. 402-573-0590. The phone lines are kind of going crazy, but Craig will put you on hold and get you all set. If you want to get those tickets, free tickets to Eagle Raceway, we'll get your name and we'll get those to you later this week. 402-573-0590. Thanks again, everybody, for tuning in to the Front Stretch. Next weekend's show is going to feature no NASCAR recap because there's no racing today. We did it last night at Bristol. Stan Cisar is going to join us in turn number 2, and Mr. Fantasy, Chad Robb from FantasyRacingTips.com will join us in turn number 3. Chad's going to talk about the final 2 races, drivers to think about for your playoffs, for your picks, and for your fantasy leagues. Them being on the bubble is going to play into a big factor on if you want to take them or not. Do you want to risk taking them because they may drive just a little bit harder, which could get you a better finish, or they could drive a little bit harder and get you a bad finish? It's kind of going to figure that out. So we're going to talk about that with Mr. Fantasy Chad Robb next week. Facebook Live, we're going to do that on Tuesday night starting at 5 o'clock. So make sure you tune in for that. Thanks again, everybody, for tuning in to the Front Stretch on AM 590, Omaha's ESPN Radio. Thank you, Dirk. You look like you got one last thing to say.
On our Facebook Live, we've still got Sean and Tracy and Kevin and Brian, and we had Lori and Bob, and we had a whole bunch of people on there today.
Everybody enjoying watching the Facebook Lives?
Burl, a bunch of them. Shane.
Oh, yeah. Tracy Weber always tuning in. Love seeing that. Sean Glasscock tuning in and chiming in their thoughts and their opinions. Brian Fayen over in eastern Iowa says Hawkeye Downs Track Championship is coming up this week too. So a legendary track over in Iowa.
And our boy Landon did get a 10th place finish in the Xfinity race on Saturday night too. That Xfinity race, I mean, they had a whole bunch of guys up front. That aren't. Greg Alding was in there at like 5th place, and Timmy Hill, I think, was in at 6th.
That's going to do it for us today. Thanks for Stan Cisar for calling in. Thanks, everybody, for watching on Facebook Live. Thanks to you for chiming in and listening on AM 590. We'll do it again next weekend. Stan Cisar more in-depth with the Race Saver Nationals, and Chad Robb from FantasyRacingTips.com. For Dirk Houston, I'm Dan Taylor. This has been The Front Stretch on AM 590, presented by Joe's Karting.
Every race car driver has run into the same problem. It's well past normal parts store closing hours, but you need that one to finish your car. The guys who brought you White Knuckle Racing by the River bring you Joe's Karting Racing Parts and Tire Store. Open until 10 p.m. Monday to Thursday and open until 11 p.m. on Friday and Saturday. A parts store that fits your after-hours schedule, and you can turn a few laps at Joe's Karting while you're waiting for your part to get pulled from their warehouse. joeskarting.com for more information.
This has been the Front Stretch Radio Show, presented by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs. To contact Dan or Dirk, find them on Facebook at The Front Stretch or email them at frontstretch590@gmail.com. If you missed any part of today's show or want to hear a previous show, subscribe to the Joe's Karting YouTube page, where you can find almost every Front Stretch show.